Okay, welcome to our podcast, A Gaggle of Gals from the Stevenson Center. There's 3 of us here today. To start off, we're going to go around and tell you a bit about ourselves. We're really excited to talk today and tell you more about our pasts and what we've learned from this program. And we appreciate your listenership. It's really good to support our podcast. So to start off, Bella, would you mind giving us a brief bio of yourself? So your name, which I just said, Bella, hometown, what your previous degree was in, and also very important, what is your focus in the Stevenson Center and your field of study? And then additionally, if you want to tell us more about your past volunteer work as well.
Sure. So I'm Bella Green. I'm from Huntley, Illinois, so the suburbs of Chicago. So grew up in Illinois and did my undergraduate work in Illinois as well. I had a bachelor's in sociology, which is also the program I'm in at Illinois State through the Stevenson Center. I'm in the sociology track. And I served as an AmeriCorps Vista prior to this. So I did my service year at a university doing service learning work. And then before that, I had some background in volunteer work. I did a lot through my church. So doing kind of summer mission trips and just kind of odd volunteer opportunities throughout the year. I did a couple of things on my own while I was in community college, and ESL tutoring, and home visitation for elderly residents. So service has been kind of in my background, so getting to continue to do that has been great.
What do you think the most rewarding aspects were of your AmeriCorps service, like maybe your proudest or most memorable moment?
Yeah, I think so. They just had started a service learning program, so it's bridging the classroom and the community. So if you ever were in a class and you went and volunteered somewhere as part of the class, that would be considered service learning. And so being a part of the team that was starting that program was really awesome. We were faculty facing, so AmeriCorps, the nature of AmeriCorps is that it's not direct service. I'm not on the ground doing the volunteering. I'm kind of arranging things in the background. And so helping set things up, and especially helping faculty who were interested in this and wanted to do this with their classes but didn't have the experience or wanted the assistance to be able to help them and get to interact with all these different faculty members I otherwise would not have, like theater professors and mathematics and environmental studies, and trying to find ways for all these different areas to still get involved in the community in their own way. So, yeah.
That's awesome. How did your AmeriCorps experience compare to any expectations you might have had of it?
So when I first applied, I didn't know it was AmeriCorps. I didn't know what AmeriCorps was. I just thought it was a position through a college. And then I learned more about it, and I was excited because I thought it was going to be, and it ended up being, I feel like, more than a normal entry-level job. I feel like I got greater responsibilities and got to do a lot of neat things, program development and putting together resources and doing research on a topic than I might have otherwise gotten to be able to. So
That's awesome. How were the people that you met during your service year?
They were really supportive. I think especially faculty members who did have a background in service learning, it was humbling to learn from them as I was navigating through it, and to just sit down and talk with them about the profession, and then to be able to pass that on to other faculty members and help support them.
That's really awesome. Thank you, Bella. Hannah, can we move on to you? Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right. So same thing, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what your bachelor's degree was in, and then what your focus at the Stevenson Center is. And then additionally, you can tell us about your Peace Corps experience and also your volunteer experiences as well.
Yeah. So my name is Hannah. I am from Chicago, although I did go to junior high and high school in the south suburbs. I got my bachelor's at Knox College in anthropology, sociology, and Spanish. It was a liberal arts degree. And then I went on to serve in the Peace Corps in Guatemala. I was in the youth development program. So that was my primary project. And then I did some side projects focusing more on women's and girls development, had some women's groups, and also did some infrastructure projects. I am in the Stevenson Center Sociology track with Bella. And yeah, I think I covered that.
Awesome. What do you feel like were the proudest moments of your Peace Corps experience and the most memorable moments? And then additionally, also, what do you think were some of the more challenging aspects of that program?
I think most rewarding was really being able to do projects that were very much rooted in the community and community needs. With the women's group I worked with, we kind of all worked together to come up with a project. They wanted to install water basins in their village. They're called pilas. And we kind of built a project, did a Peace Corps partnership, raised some funds, but it very much felt like theirs, and they really took ownership of the project. And I think it was super rewarding to see how it empowered them to realize that, like, hey, they came up with this idea, they made it happen. I was really only there to coordinate things, Peace Corps, and that's really what it should be all about, rather than me coming in and trying to impart change or projects on them. I think challenging wise, Guatemala is known to be a pretty dangerous country. And because Peace Corps is, it's a government program, and they really do care very much about the security of their volunteers. They have to respond when security issues arise. And the region that I was in kind of during my time got more and more risky. It was close to some known drug routes and things like that. So what ended up happening was I had to leave a couple months earlier than my slated end of service. So it was really challenging in those last couple months to be faced with a much shorter deadline and having to wrap up everything I had planned on completing in my 2 years in 2 months, less than 2 years, and kind of saying my goodbyes quicker than I thought I would have to. So that was tough.
So you kind of talked about this a little bit already, I guess, by answering that last question, but how do you think that your experience compared to your expectations of it? I know people a lot of times from Peace Corps have certain expectations, and maybe they're not always met once they get there.
Yeah, I think I went into Peace Corps with as little expectations as I could, just because I didn't want to expect something and then be disappointed. And I really didn't know entirely what I was getting into. You don't really know where you're going until pretty soon before, and then it all happens quite quickly. But yeah, I think the setting in which I was living and all of that seemed kind of to align with what I would have expected. A very rural village out in the mountains and northeastern Guatemala. But yeah, I think the day-to-day lack of structure on my side, Peace Corps, once you're done with those 3 months of training, you're off, you're a free agent, and you kind of do with your days and your time and your 2 years what you want. And so really being able to, for the first time arguably in my life, create structure and plans and projects on my own, without a supervisor, without a boss, was unexpected and very challenging, but I think really important, an important first step for me, kind of coming out of school.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about the people you met and maybe some lessons that you learned from those people or the program experience in general?
Yeah. I mean, the people that the people in my village were amazing, super hospitable. They really cared for me, and were super willing to participate with me and kind of make the best of the partnership. Yeah, I think, it verges on cliche, but when you go to a place where it's so different than what you're used to coming from, a wealthy Western nation, to somewhere that doesn't have the things that you've kind of taken for granted, it's a really enlightening experience to see how resilient people can be,
Yeah.
and just the level of resiliency and hard work and everything that had to kind of go into life in this really rural kind of farm village, really impressed me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I think I'll move on to myself here. I might just ask myself the questions unless you all want to jump in.
Yeah, well, you tell us your bio, and then we'll follow up.
Vote me out from there.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so I'm Rose. Rose Commins. I'm from Greenbelt, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C. I've not lived there for a long time. I got my bachelor's from Earlham College in English, so unrelated to what I'm studying now, but still appreciated it. Earlham's a small school in Indiana, and then my Stevenson Center focus is Kinesiology and Recreation. So when I get my master's, it's going to be in recreation administration. So for people who might not know a lot about that, we study recreation and leisure behaviors and community education programs, community recreation programs, and a lot of management as well is what we focus on. And then for I did AmeriCorps. So I did AmeriCorps directly out of high school. So I was pretty young. I was one of the youngest on my team. I did AmeriCorps National Civilian Community Corps, AmeriCorps NCCC. So definitely not as professional as Bella's experience. It's a lot more like outdoors work. But I do think there's some good professional aspects of it. So I got stationed in California. So I flew out from Maryland, little 18-year-old with my bag that they sent me to fill my stuff with. And then they signed me to a team of 10 people. And I traveled for 12 months with them. And we had so we were stationed at a base outside Sacramento, and we would go on 4 projects. In between each project, we'd come back to Sacramento for a little bit for more training. And I did a project outside of Yosemite, working on a camp there, doing maintenance. My second project, I was in Salt Lake City, so they count Utah in that Pacific region for AmeriCorps. And I was working at a homeless shelter. Third round, I was back in Northern California doing trail work. And then my fourth round, they had us doing outdoor science education, as well as helping out at an outdoor urban garden in San Diego, so in Southern California. I think the most rewarding aspects were just that it super put me out of my comfort zone. So I just lived in my small town of Greenbelt my whole life, and then got sent here with people from all over the country. And it's physically challenging too. You do a lot of physical training. You get tested on your physical abilities. And I'm a little competitive, and so I like that part a lot. But it was definitely a challenge. And sometimes you're camping for 6 weeks, and other times you're sleeping on the floor of a school, which is where we were staying when we were in Northern California, or in the staff room of a homeless shelter. So it definitely were challenging moments, but I honestly do think that me being young was kind of a benefit of it. I wasn't jaded at all because I had done nothing to have that yet, where I think sometimes it might have been more challenging out of college when you're used to a little more independence. But and people from out of college go into it being used to independence, and then they're kind of thrown back into this very structured thing. So kind of different from Hannah, you're very micromanaged and Triple C. But I had never had any experience of being on my own before, so to me it was like it was wild, it was amazing. So that was definitely the most rewarding part, is just gaining a lot of independence and meeting a lot of new people, and also just like networking. So it's like people that I worked with when I was 18, now at almost 25, are still, those connections are still definitely benefiting me. And I think a lot of people from AmeriCorps and Peace Corps share that sentiment, that people you meet, you don't even sort of realize it, but someone has a brother who works somewhere that knows a job that would be perfect for you, or can write you a recommendation, an old site leader. So those parts of it I definitely loved. So how did the experience compare to my expectations? I didn't really know what to expect that much, so I went and like read like a lot of like Reddit blogs and things about it, because they basically told us, what they tell us is kind of like a repetition of the elevator speech, right? Like you'll go for 10 months, 12 people, you'll travel, you'll do work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then you'll have your team positions and your individual service hours. And I think I had really just focused on the main like meat of it, which is that you're working with a team on service projects for 10 months and traveling. And I think what kind of was more of a surprise to me, something that I wasn't expecting, was all the sort of independent individual leadership roles that they gave you. So like I got there and I got assigned to be the project outreach liaison for my team and the service learning initiator. So service learning, I would try and help like give meaning to the service we were doing, and then project outreach, I was finding projects for my team's independent service hours. So you have to commit to a certain amount of service hours in your year of service through AmeriCorps and Triple C. So that was something that I really was not, I'm sure they told me about it, but I still was not super expecting it. And then I got there, and I think that was really valuable for me because I was very on my own in that. And I had never done outreach work or anything like that before. And I really ended up liking it a lot, and it's totally benefited me.
Well, thank you, Rose.
Yeah, overall, good experience, challenging but good.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's continue. I would love to hear from everybody about how you found the Stevenson Center program at ISU. Maybe Bella, we can start with you. What led you to enroll in the Stevenson Center?
Yeah, so getting a master's was not what I thought I would be doing. I finished undergrad and I wanted to get to work. I wanted to start just working and using what I had learned in undergrad. And then I found what became my AmeriCorps experience, and then I found out it was AmeriCorps and it was only a year long. And I think that was good because it gave me that gap to kind of figure out what I was interested in, give me the work experience, but then start gaining interest in going back to school. And of course, with AmeriCorps giving the educational award, that kind of helped me narrow down what schools I would go to, because there's a select number that give additional financial aid on top of the educational award, and Illinois State was there were two, I think, that matched it really well. It was basically, if you were able to get into these fellows programs, it covered almost all of your expenses. So that was really motivating. And so I applied to these two schools, both in the sociology programs. And so, of course, the financial aspects, but I think also both of these programs had it mixed practical with academic. So the Stevenson Center obviously has the first year academic, and the second year the applied internship aspect. And the other school I was applying to did that, but it was kind of intermixed the 2 years. So both of them, I thought I was getting the education, I was getting to go back to school. I really liked the discipline of sociology. I was excited to learn more, but also to get that work experience at the same time and to have it kind of at a higher level than what maybe I could find on my own for an internship. To have this reputable program link me up with an organization that they were partnered with and get experience in that way was really neat. And then I got in, and yeah, so now I'm here. I don't know if that answered all the questions, but
Yeah. How did your classes go during first year? Did you have a favorite? Some challenges?
It's definitely rigorous because it's like an enhanced course load, like more coursework than the normal master's program. So adjusting to that, definitely, it just became my life. Like, it was like I would wake up 8 a.m. I'm reading for whatever, preparing for my TA shift, and then I'm on campus. There were some days I was in the same building for 12 hours, just like doing my TA shift or doing my own work, and then I'd get home, I'd read theory until 10 at night, and then start it over. So it was just very immersed in it, which was kind of neat. It was kind of to focus on something that I liked learning about for so long. And of course, I don't know if I would have been able to do it if we didn't have such a supportive cohort, to know that others were in it at the same time, and had similar challenges and similar stress loads and things. I think that really helped me make it through that first year. In terms of courses that I like theory. I think theory's cool. It was nice to get like a graduate level theory course. And then I've really enjoyed the thesis aspect, actually, to find a topic, to kind of narrow down a research topic, and then just read as much as I can about it and become almost an expert in this kind of niche area is neat to me. So yeah.
We'll talk about our research a little later, but what was that process like for you, kind of honing in on a single topic?
Yeah, so I wanted something that was relevant. I wanted it to stay with me past graduate school, and so taking the time to figure out what that might be, what my interests were, what I was studying in undergrad, and seeing if I wanted to mature any of that, or kind of what direction I wanted to go into. And I think it helped a lot to get to know my professors. It was just an excuse to pop into somebody's office and say, can I talk this through with you? And it helped me get to know my professors a little bit more. And then from there, kind of picking out my topic and refining it, and then moving forward with actually doing the research. So
Great. Rose, how about you? What landed you at the Stevenson Center?
Yeah, so similar to Bella, I was definitely not planning on getting my master's degree. I was like, got my bachelor's, that's it. But I knew I wanted to work with recreation. So I love community recreation. I just think that it's, joy is a human right, and that's a good way to get people to experience joy together. So I was really passionate about that. And I also, my AmeriCorps experience was really important to my identity and my career path. So I kind of wanted that strong community influence, but knew I wanted to pursue recreation. I did not know that you could study recreation at all. I think that maybe the schools I grew up around, I went to a small school for college, and they definitely did not have recreation. And then it's definitely a bigger thing. So Illinois is actually the gold standard for recreation schools. U of I has a fantastic program, and so does Illinois State. So it's more well known here, but I didn't really understand that you could study that. And I was working at a Girl Scout camp the summer before my senior year of college, in Champaign, Illinois, so about an hour from here in Bloomington-Normal, where I am currently still. And one of my coworkers was an alum of the Stevenson Center, so they did the Peace Corps prep program, which they used to do. And I was saying, oh, I love recreation. I don't really know if I want to go back to school because I don't know how I'd study that. And she's like, well, you can study it. And there's a program that is specifically for AmeriCorps alums where they would place you in a recreation. You get your master's in recreation administration, and you would work for that department, and you would also get your fellowship with community and economic development. And I was like, that is completely wild that this exact fit exists. So I looked into it and applied, and then once I got in, I was very excited, and then graduated college, and then packed up my stuff and moved to Illinois. So I was going from Indiana to Illinois. Classes were great. I really love my recreation classes. They were definitely really challenging, but they're super hands-on, and that is like, I just learn and think much better like when I am doing things, like just physically moving with it. So that was really great. Like I had, my favorite class was management of recreation. So we actually, our biggest project was that our professor had us complete a needs assessment of the recreation department for a neighboring town, El Paso, Illinois. So we collected data from the town. We took a citywide survey and we presented on it, and we held focus groups, and we made professional recommendations on how they should use their recreational budget. So that was just so cool for me, because it was like everything I nerd out about, because it was like community engagement and talking about how you can effectively use a city budget for recreation, why it's worth investing in. And that was just really fantastic. I also really did like our community development classes, the classes that I took at the Stevenson Center. My favorite one that I took was one that actually me, Hannah, and Bella all were also working on a project together. So we did a project. What was the name of that class? Project design?
Yeah.
Project design. Yeah, we did that in our spring semester, and we and one other woman too, Rebecca, we all worked on a project with the local YWCA, and we helped give them professional recommendations on what they should do with a space they were looking to reuse. So that was super rewarding as well, because it's that similar thing where it's hands-on and you don't even realize how much you've learned through the process until the end, and you realize all the research you spent doing. So I think that's something cool about the Stevenson Center, is it kind of didn't always realize all the skills I was learning maybe until I started my professional practice and realized that I could apply them. Seconding Bella, it definitely was very challenging, very long days. So for my assistantship, I was teaching exercise classes. So students take exercise classes for credit. So I was teaching 4 credits I was teaching 6 credits at a time. And then, so I was teaching first aid and CPR classes, and then I was also teaching cycling classes and later aquatic fitness classes. So I like the fact that they're very hands-on, and we're working out and we were talking, and I like things related to community health. So that was interesting too for me. But it definitely was overwhelming, because being the sole instructor for those classes and grading and dealing with students, and I also just graduated college, so a lot of my students were not that much younger than me. So trying to be appropriately authoritative, but also understanding that I'm also just a graduate assistant as well, that was definitely challenging. And yeah, there was definitely those days where I know we all experience this, where you like, oh, I'm gonna go in and then I'll get to go home for lunch and then I'll come back and take my class, and then no, you're there at like 9 a.m. and your class is over at like 10 p.m. and you're like, I have been outside maybe once all day. So those were definitely really long, challenging days, but they were so busy in a way that it kind of went by really quick. So like all of a sudden you'd be like, oh my gosh, it's a new week. So it wasn't ever like the days were so long and they were dragging on. It was almost like the days were so long and they were going so fast. Because at the end of the day, everyone was doing something they're passionate about.
It did go by quickly.
Yeah.
I think it's an important difference to note that, for our graduate assistantships, Bella and I in sociology, we were assigned to really support a professor, so doing grading and supportive work, office hours, maybe some co-teaching. But for K&R, you were very much the professor, kind of doing it all from start to finish. Yeah. And that's a really cool hands-on experience that you got to.
Yeah. And I think it's something that is, thank you for bringing it up, Hannah. I think that's something that's really important too for recreation professionals to have. So if people are listening to this and are interested in recreation, then if you're thinking that you'd want to get your CPRP, so Certified Recreational Professional. That really helps you get a job, and I'm starting in the process of working towards that this year. So it's my small dog moving around. And those classes really help me like demonstrate. So like when I am studying or looking at jobs, I can say I had this hands-on experience teaching and instructing of leadership, because in so much of recreational jobs are about, can we give you this crowd of 20 people and can you place them all in a volunteer position and get this event to work and make it an effective community experience. So I think that was definitely a big challenge for me, but it's definitely paying off. So
Yeah, that's great. Well, I guess I'll touch on my answer to this. So I guess I'm a bit of an odd woman out in that I took 9 years between undergrad and entering my master's program. So I spent obviously 2 years doing Peace Corps and then several years kind of dabbling in multiple sectors. I worked for nonprofits, I worked for higher ed, and did quite a bit of traveling. So I always knew that I wanted to get my master's. I just didn't know how or what it would look like. I kind of envisioned doing it through a job. But I actually got an email from CAPCA, which is the Chicago Area Peace Corps Association. So that kind of harkens back to what Rose said earlier about these kind of long-standing networks that we get from AmeriCorps and Peace Corps. And it mentioned the Stevenson Center program and how it was a full scholarship and all the benefits. And so that really kind of got my wheels turning, and I did some research, and the Stevenson Center program ended up being the closest match to what I wanted in a program. It was close enough to Chicago to not be a crazy relocation, and I felt that I would be supported as a slightly older graduate student, but I always felt very much accepted by the cohort, and we had a good range of people straight out of an AmeriCorps, straight out of college, or with more years of work experience. So it was a nice diverse group. Yeah, and I guess class-wise, it absolutely was a super intensive year, but all said and done, I'd much rather have done it the way we did it, where we cram all that coursework in for year one, and now that we're in our professional practice year, that's all we need to focus on, that in our research. I can't imagine being able to juggle coursework and professional practice work and research. I'm better at really throwing myself into one thing. So yes, the course load was crazy and we had our graduate assistantships on the side. But yeah, you kind of just learned to live in Schrader Hall and, read during your lunch period and really just kind of grind it out. And at the end of the day, it's 2 semesters. It flies by. Yes, it's stressful, but we were all in it together, the 11 of us. And I feel like we kind of through thick and thin made it through. We're all still standing. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that you said that. I think we all were very supportive of each other, and I think previous cohorts have been the same.
Yeah, I think the Stevenson Center is makes sure to foster that in our orientation activities and everything that we do, kind of feel like a group, that we have classes all together for semesters, so that we can all support each other through the toughness of the first year, the intensity.
And I think it was very rigorous, and it was like you said, you kind of get tunnel vision a little bit, but I think we did a good job of remembering that you can take like Friday evening or something to get together to have the cohort through like struggling times, but also I think it was really helpful to have those little breaks, and that everybody understood it. They were like, we know you only have 2 hours and then you have to go back to work, so let's like take it easy for 2 hours and then get back to it. So I think the cohort helped balance that as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And professors, I mean, in sociology, at least I can attest that professors were very understanding that of what Stevenson Center meant, that we were taking these extra course loads, that we had a lot going on, and they were cognizant of that. Still held us to high standards, but I think there was some I felt like there was a sentiment of, we know that you guys are, kind of doing the grind, and we'll work with you as much as we can.
Yeah.
Well, I'll pass it over to you, Bella.
Yeah. So now that we've discussed kind of our backgrounds and what brought us to the Stevenson Center, our background in service and things, let's talk about where we're at now, because we're all in our second year. We're each a couple months in now, at least, into our professional practice. So I guess maybe we'll start with Rose, if you could kind of say where your professional practice is, where you're at, the organization and the location, and just kind of what are the big projects that, because each of us had to develop a work plan, and so what are the projects that you're working on, have completed, or are planning to complete?
Yeah, thank you, Bella. So I am placed with the city of Bloomington. So if you all don't know this yet, if you're interested in applying, and that's why you're listening to this, there's the town of Normal and the city of Bloomington are the twin cities. Basically, they are right next to each other and kind of fade into one another, and do a lot of what I've learned from this job is they do a lot of collaborative work. So ISU is in Normal, but like I've lived in Bloomington since I moved here, and it was like 7 minutes to campus. So I'm from the city of Bloomington, living in Bloomington, so I didn't have to move. That's nice. Me and my dog got to stay put. We moved to an apartment like 2 blocks away. So, and I really like it. I'm in their community development department, so very fitting for our program. And I work very closely with one of the planners, and I mostly though work with the grants coordinator. Her name's Jennifer. She's really awesome. And they've given me a lot of independence to do projects. So I've been working on grants. So I helped write a grant application, and it got funding for the city. So that was really excited. Definitely my proudest moment there. And now we're working on a census initiative. So Census 2020, that's a big push, trying to make sure everyone's counted. Working on the consolidated plan. So right now the city is, they just closed yesterday at midnight applications for community development block grants. So organizations in town can, within the city, can apply for money that the city is granted at a federal level. And then they will distribute it as they see fit. So we're working on that right now, and we are in the midst of getting ready to publish our consolidated plan that describes what our plan is to do with our money and the partner organizations that we will be funding over the next 5 years. So a lot of work with that. And sort of census, consolidated plan, and doing grants, I'd say, are my 3 main focuses, but I also do stuff with planning and zoning and some GIS experience too. They sent me to a GIS conference, which was just in Normal, but it was really fantastic, a great experience. So learning a lot more about community mapping. And it really does play into a lot of my parks and recreation experience, because a lot of what I do is like talking with people and communication, and help like writing things for people. And I think my parks and rec experience of management and community outreach and survey experience has really, really come in handy of this position. So it's definitely like an intense position, because you're doing so many different things. I have not really just one focus, and a few different people that I'm reporting to, but overall it's been really fantastic, and all of the supervisors are really great. And Jennifer, the grants coordinator, she has really given me some good room to grow and help me answer all of my 2 million questions. So I would say that my experience has been very positive.
Yeah. And you had mentioned in the last question that you have experience and you have skills that you developed last year that you've been able to apply or have applied to your professional practice. Did you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think that some of the stuff we learned in community development, just like we talked about CDBG grants, and we talked about TIF districts, and city funding. And also we talked about a lot of projects and historical community development that's relevant to McLean County and Bloomington-Normal. So just having that background was really helpful for this position, like going in, understanding at a basic level, like how federal housing projects work. That was really important because most of what community development departments do is housing for people. So I think that was really useful. And then, yeah, any community outreach work that we did, so like that project design class we did, that was really cool. That helped me. And I still see the woman we worked with from the YWCA, she is at a lot of meetings that I'm at. So just like even connections like that is another example of those outreach benefits. Additionally, the management classes I took of Parks and Rec, just learning again how to do those surveys, how to create surveys too is really helpful, because I think a lot of the things that the community development program at Stevenson Center does is not just tell you what things are, but show you how to create them. So like, of course, I knew what a community survey was before coming in, and I could have taken one, but I would not have had any idea of how to like create a survey or what is effective to what are effective strategies for community development and for survey making. And just that general sort of wider knowledge helps me make everyday smaller decisions. Like, what should I be saying to this person to kind of relay what we want from this project, and just things like that. So.
Yeah. And Hannah, did you want to share where are you at, both the organization and the location? And then what are some big projects you're working on or plan to get done during your professional practice?
Yeah, so I am at the Financial Health Network, formerly CFSI, in Chicago. So I moved from Chicago to Bloomington-Normal for year one, and then straight back up to Chicago for year two, but this is where I'm from, so it feels comfortable. Financial Health Network is a nonprofit that focuses on improving the financial health of Americans through research, through being kind of like a network hub and a network organization, and through consulting. So I work as part of their programs team, and the programs team focuses on doing projects and that kind of live either in the research and measurement side of things or the consulting side of things. So to date, and really from when I started in July until the holidays, all of my work has been very much seated in the research and measurement. And then kind of January post-holidays onward, I'm hoping to do some more work with the consulting side of things, because that's kind of maybe where I have my sight set for future career plans. But so the project I've worked on, the kind of first substantial project was very quantitative, was analyzing market data, it's called the market sizing report. It's an annual report where we look at the size of the underserved financial market. So that would be any sort of products that are known to potentially be not necessarily predatory, but that we know that people who don't have access to mainstream financial services tend to use. So payday loans, subprime auto loans, buy here, pay here auto loans, subprime leasing, things like that. And we take those markets and we size them in revenue and volume, and we put this report out to try to illuminate the opportunities that stand for financial services institutions to fill those gaps and really meet the needs of the underserved population. So that was my first big project, and that was really quite out of my comfort zone, even though we had some really amazing quantitative coursework in sociology. This was kind of much more on the market analysis side of things, which I'd never had experience doing. So it was a steep learning curve and a lot of hair pulling, but I learned a lot. And now I'm working on another project that's very qualitative we're looking at the low to moderate income 50 and older and their inclination to adopt digital financial services. So we're doing interviews and focus groups in Omaha and Memphis and New York, and kind of piecing together some design strategies that we can then present to financial services providers for how they can innovate for this certain kind of subsect of the population. So it went from very much staring at spreadsheets all day to being on the ground in interviews and writing those up. So really wide range of experience, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit, even though it's been challenging. And as far as, you know, how my coursework from last year has helped, I think we had some really great methods coursework built in. We had quantitative methods in the fall, we had qualitative methods in the spring, and it kind of was integrated in other coursework as well. So for me, with so much time in between my undergrad and this, I needed that refresher, and I'm absolutely applying those methods daily in my work. So
yeah. And do you have any words of advice, I suppose, because with the steep learning curve, kind of what would you recommend? Because yeah, you kind of have to see where your placement ends up being, and it might be a new experience. So what would you recommend for kind of overcoming that initial shock, maybe?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, imposter syndrome is always real. You know, you start a new place and you are, like, at least I do, automatically look for ways in which I am not enough or not qualified or not, you know, and that frankly is a waste of time. And I think I had to kind of reteach myself very quickly to get over that and figure out what questions I wasn't asking and how to ask them and who to talk to, and really just how to figure out what it was that I was supposed to be doing and do it. So I think, and I think I was able to do that, because when you're thrown into a project and you have to kind of deliver this thing by a deadline, it's kind of do or die, and you kind of put your ego on the side and say, hey, I can do this. You know, I have enough experience. I just have to figure out who to talk to, where to pull from, and make it happen. Yeah, fake it till you make it, I guess, is the overall message there.
Yeah. And then I could jump into mine then.
Yeah.
I am working at the Housing Assistance Council in Washington, D.C. So it's my first time out of state doing anything. So I moved, I'm living in Maryland and working in D.C. And Housing Assistance Council is a national housing nonprofit that specializes in rural housing. Because with a sociological background, I've looked into housing, I was interested in housing. That's why it was the organization I was most interested in joining, because I wanted to learn more about housing generally. But this focus on rural is something, it makes up such a large landmass of the country, but oftentimes they get left out of the conversation. So being able to focus on these underserved populations is awesome. I'm in the Research and Information Division. I was brought on, and from day one, even before I started, my boss emailed me some materials, and he's like, you're going to help write a report on this thing called low-income housing tax credits. And I was like, I have no idea what that is, but I'm still working on it. We're finalizing our drafts, and we're sending it off to get edits done, probably this week. And so it's been a very long process. Yeah. But learning about this, and it's the most successful form of housing assistance currently, so it's important, but it's super complicated, like most government programs I'm learning. And so helping with that, and I do other odd project tasks. They do these every other week. They release a report of research. They have this quarterly paper. They have this massive report they publish every 10 years in line with the census. That's kind of like, what's the situation of rural housing, kind of what's going on right now. Here's an update 10 years later. And so I'm helping with that, and I'm focusing on a part of the report that focuses on a region near the US-Mexico border where there's a lot of rural housing. And so kind of all these different areas, but they all center on rural housing. So it's been good. And I'm learning a lot and using the skills that I have, pulling a lot of data, a lot of quantitative stuff, pulling census data for these reports, making maps, using the skills I have. We're just learning about something I know nothing about, but then putting it into a report that's going out to a wider audience, all of those practical skills. Yeah, and I also, with the community development course, I think it was with you, Rose, we did creative placemaking. Yeah. And I came into the organization and they have a branch. They just started doing creative placemaking in rural communities.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so I mentioned that I had a background in it, and now that's kind of a part of my work too, where they have this cohort of 20 rural organizations, and they all have these unique placemaking projects. So like updating their main street, or creating a walking path, like all these ways to improve the community, but using creative ways, using design and stuff. So it was kind of having that slight background in it, and now I'm kind of immersed in this division of the organization. That's been really neat and different than some of the research work that I'm doing. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Bella, for leading that last question. Now to wrap things up, we're going to talk a little bit about next steps. So if we can start with you, Hannah, if you want to tell us a bit about your next steps. So what your thesis is about, what you're working on, any plans to present your research, is there any sort of jobs you have in mind or continuing education you wish to seek, and then maybe some closing thoughts or advice.
Sure. So in terms of my professional practice, I'm just really I'm working with my supervisor to get assigned to some consulting projects. I think that's going to be a really good experience for me. And as I go into my job search, really, I think I'll be looking at positions that are heavy in the research realm, research and measurement, maybe some nonprofit consulting, to be determined. I'm also working on my thesis, which is on volunteer tourism. I collected qualitative data over the summer in Guatemala at a volunteer tourism organization. So I'm kind of at the tail end of coding my transcripts now, and then hoping I have a week off for Christmas. I'm hoping to really kind of grind down during that week and start writing up some preliminary analysis sections and kind of keep that momentum going, because it is a balancing act, working 35 hours a week and then also having some personal research to do on the side. But it's a topic that I chose because I am passionate about it. I obviously have a place, in my heart for Guatemala. So that, if nothing else, that kind of drives that forward. And I think any kind of last advice, I think is that, as you kind of grind through the first year of the program, take advantage as much as you can. And when you're thinking about research topics for the second year, you have this option for capstone or thesis, but really try to pick something that either you are super passionate about and or is connected to kind of the career path you see yourself on. So I was, really kind of thinking, if I work in international development of any kind, volunteer tourism will have practical application. So it's something I could talk about in an interview, for example. And I think that was good advice that I got during my first semester that I would pass along.
Well, thank you, Hannah.
Yeah.
Moving on to Bella now. Again, same thing. Do you mind telling us about your next steps? So thesis, any plans you might have to research, jobs or continuing education you're thinking about, and then maybe a closing thought or advice for a prospective student.
Yeah, so my thesis I'm currently working on, it's on local community government and the interactions that they have. So very similar to the work that you're doing, Rose, probably, where you have to gather input from the community You'll do surveys, you'll do public hearings, and then that typically gets incorporated into a comprehensive plan or something like that. But looking at those communication channels between those two groups, because it's one group acting on behalf of the general public. So in what ways is everybody's voice being included? In what ways are you ensuring that you're getting certain populations? And so I'm studying those interactions, and I did interviews with local leaders, so planners and economic developers, council members, aldermen and women, and things like that. And so I've collected the data, I've transcribed it, and now I'm in the process of coding it and analyzing it and putting it into my paper. And my goal is to put it into a publishable form and maybe send it out to journals. That would be neat. I didn't realize that was a thing. I didn't know that was an option, but then once I heard about it, I was like, that's a good kind of goal to get myself to. So those are my plans. That's kind of it. I suppose I could apply for conferences and things, which I've been looking into a little bit, but nothing specific. And then kind of next steps. I think that's where I see myself going. The direction professionally that I see myself going is maybe into the planning field, local government, and things like that. I think it was, again, it's a really good opportunity I've gotten to, because I was interested in housing, and I wasn't sure if maybe I wanted to do that, a nonprofit or a housing authority or something like that. And I'm getting that experience now, but enough to kind of figure out what I want to be doing more long term. And the work that I'm doing, kind of government programs and policies and things, are all related. I'm still getting all of these skills that are going to be relevant, but that's kind of where I see myself going next. And then kind of recommendations is very similar to Hannah's. I'd say pick research that's relevant to you. Maybe you don't know where you're going to end up, or maybe you have a bunch of interests that are not quite related, but at least picking one of them and making everything relevant to you, more long-term in what you're kind of doing. Because the exciting part about my thesis is I'm becoming kind of an expert in community, not an expert because I don't have the practical experience, but I'm learning a lot about research in the background in community planning. And if that's where I end up, that's going to be relevant for years to come. So I think definitely taking time, you've got the year of schooling to do these research projects, so kind of make the most of them for yourself. So.
That's awesome. Thank you. I guess I'll jump into my version, unless you have any other final advice from either of you. Bits of wisdom.
No, you go ahead, Rose.
Okay. So next steps. I do not have a thesis or a capstone. Yay, join Parks and Rec. To do thesis or a capstone. I did some research over the summer instead. So instead you take like an extra course basically. It was an independent study really though. And I worked with the director of the KNR program, and I worked with Girl Scouts of Central Illinois, and I set up recreational programs to help them earn their first aid badges, since I was teaching first aid, and I think that, you know, Boy Scouts get to learn all sorts of cool first aid stuff, so it's nice for Girl Scout stuff, get as many of their first aid badges as they can. So I planned an event. I think it was 50 girls that got their first aid badges, and I did like the sort of procurement of that, getting people to allow me to do that, the planning and research on Girl Scouts next steps, talked to some public education officers locally, and designed the materials, wrote the lesson plans, helped. There was like an actual event where I went in and we did, I think, 4 of their 8 steps for it. So they got half of it done in that time, which is nice. Worked with the Girl Scout camps of Central Illinois, so that when, you know, their parents are paying for them to go to camp and they come out and now have just a good camp experience, but also with these badges that can take them to the next steps in what Girl Scouts really is, which is a service organization at a certain point the older you get. So that was awesome for me. And then I wrote about it and submitted that and did some evaluations of it. And yeah, that was mine. It was very hands-on. It was like an intense kind of like 1 month period that I had to do it. So it was kind of like a challenge. Like you have to help this many people earn this achievement in a month. So go forth. But then it was done. So now I have my professional practice, and that's the only thing I need to dedicate my time to. So that is really exciting for me. I'm really enjoying that. And then, so I have actually some research that I had been working on with the therapeutic recreation department under Kinesiology and Recreation. So that is recreation that works with like mental health organizations, special needs organizations, and I had done some research on core room mindfulness and how that can be applied at a college setting to reduce stress among students, but also sort of like as a recreation modality. So maybe that's something that could be introduced in special needs facilities and mental health facilities. So I took some core room classes and wrote a proposal for a research project that 2 undergraduate students I got to pick up. So I've been talking to them a little bit about it. So hopefully I'll have both of them fully agree to do it, and then I would maybe eventually help them present that, but that's kind of off in the distance for now. As of now, I don't have plans to get a PhD or continuing education, but I really would like to have a job in recreation or some sort of community development job, but ideally recreation, either with a municipality, because I really have enjoyed working with local government, or I would love to work at like a Boys and Girls Club or YMCA or YWCA, so a larger national organization. Girl Scouts, I'd be happy to work there too. And I would love to do either like advocacy work for them, so advocacy writing or outreach, or I would love to do sort of program design, so helping them figure out maybe at like a larger level what sort of programs are most beneficial to the strategies and what this organization stands for. So that ideally is what I like to do. And then closing thoughts, just that, yeah, the first year is really tough. I mean, the whole thing is a challenge, but really do try and form that bond with the people in your cohort, because it's been very beneficial. Like we would, as Bella was saying, we would hang out a lot, and that I think really helped us all to realize you're not the only one that's overwhelmed and stressed. And that's nice to have that community to lean on. And then definitely like take advantage of as many resources as possible. Try and go to any conferences that you can. Take advantage of the student discounts, just anything. For a lot of people, this is the last time you will like be a student unless you're getting your PhD. So trying to like, your school has like health services and mental health programs and wellness programs, free, like not free gym membership obviously, but a gym membership that's included in your student fees. So taking advantage of all those things as on like a personal wellness level, but then also any sort of professional development that they offer, just try and go to all of it. Because in my head, I kind of like, I would try to go to all the professional development things for kinesiology and recreation. And even if I was like a little embarrassed or didn't know anyone, it's kind of like, what do you have to lose? You're a grad student, you're here for 2 years. Like that's all the time you have here. And you're living off campus. It's different. It's not like it's a different feeling than undergrad. So you don't have much to lose by really sort of putting yourself out there, even if it feels a little embarrassing sometimes. Yeah. Should we do breakfast cereal?
I love our closing.
Nice.
Who wants to lead it? Should I?
Sure.
All right. Well, in closing, we are going to do a quick, one quick last question, fun question. But thank you all, everybody out there in the world listening to this. Thanks for giving
all of our fans.
Yeah, Rose and Bella and myself your time to hear us out. Hopefully this was illuminating in some way or another. And in closing, and I'll turn this question to Bella first. Bella, if you were a breakfast cereal, which would you be and why?
I had to like think about it just in case we came to this. I think I'd be Honey Nut Cheerios. Oh no. Are we a Honey Nut Cheerios group? Because it's good for the heart. It's hearty, but it's got a little bit of sweetness. Classic. Never go wrong. And Aldi sells it, and it's normal brand. That's how you know it's good.
Oh, yeah. Gotta love Aldi.
Yeah.
Oh, number one grad school tip is love Aldi.
Love Aldi. Rose, if you were a breakfast cereal, which would you be and why?
Well, I was gonna say Honey Nut Cheerios. I think though, in retrospect, that was mostly because I just had them for breakfast from Aldi. They're on sale this week. But I also have another answer, which is Lucky Charms. Because, okay, Lucky Charms, you got a lot of the same things that you got in Cheerios, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fun-shaped, oat-based cereal, a little sweetness, but also, you know, still got that heartiness. I know it's terrible for you. But then you also have fun marshmallows that are sugary and sweet and bright and indulgent. So I think it's nice to have both that sort of heartiness that reminds you this is a food and also those marshmallows that allow you to kind of go beyond that and make breakfast a fun experience. So grounding, but also you can have a little fun with it.
Nice. I love Lucky Charms. And
what about you, Hannah?
Yeah, so if I were a breakfast cereal, and hear me out, because this is gonna sound lame in the beginning, but I would be oatmeal. But here's the explanation. Oatmeal is boring. However, I pride myself on, if nothing else, being an adaptable human being. I think I've done a lot of really different things in my life so far, worn a lot of hats, had to kind of adjust to different scenarios. And think about oatmeal. You know, you can eat hot, you can have it sweet, savory, with fruit, with not. You can have it cold, the overnight thing. You could put it in smoothies as a thickener. You can make oatmeal cookies. I mean, the options are basically endless. It's delicious and hearty. Yeah, that's my cereal.
Amazing. That's a really fantastic answer. I would definitely hire you.
Thanks, Rose.
Oh.
Well, I think that wraps our Stevenson Center podcast, the Gaggle of Gals.
Gaggle of Gals.
Coming at you from Chicago, Maryland, and Bloomington, Illinois.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.